It's 2 a.m. again. The charts are dark, the trades are done, and the silence is louder than usual. There's something about this hour. The market sleeps. The world turns away. And in this stillness, you can finally hear the things you've been avoiding all day. The doubt, the fatigue, the question you try not to ask out loud. Why am I still doing this? Welcome to the midnight trading, where the noise fades and the truth begins to speak. If you find something in these stories that resonates, like comment or subscribe. You're not alone in this journey, even if it feels like you are. Put on your headphones, dim the lights, and let's begin. The day I almost quit trading wasn't a dramatic blowout. It wasn't some epic loss, though I've had those. It was quieter than that. It was the 8th red day in a row. A slow bleed. Not catastrophic, just consistent failure. Like erosion. Each morning I woke up thinking today might be the turn. And each night I stared at the screen slightly more hollow, slightly more unsure. I remember sitting there that night. Just me, the blue light, and the sound of my own breathing. I hadn't spoken to anyone in hours. I hadn't eaten since noon. And all I could think was, what am I doing with my life? That moment, when quitting felt like clarity, not cowardice, is the reason I understand why 90% of day traders don't make it past the first year. It's not just the losses. It's the erosion of self. Most people think trading breaks you because of money. But really, it breaks your identity. It pulls at the threads of who you think you are, disciplined, focused, resilient. And every bad trade is like a mirror cracking, showing you who you might really be underneath the ego. The market doesn't just take your capital. It takes your confidence, your sense of control, your routines, your relationships, one by one, like water dripping on stone. I started trading like a lot of people, young, confident, sharp. I studied charts like sacred texts, read the books, watched the YouTube channels, took notes, highlighted quotes. I told myself I'd be different, smarter, more disciplined. But the market doesn't care about your ambition. It will humble you. And if you're not ready for that, if you tie your identity too tightly to your wins, you will shatter the first time you lose. That night, I remember looking at my P&L and whispering to myself, maybe this just isn't for me. And in that whisper, I heard something deeper, a kind of fatigue that isn't about sleep. It's about disappointment. Not in the markets, in myself. I started to recall small things. The times I moved my stop just to avoid the pain of being wrong. The trades I took not because they were good setups, but because I was bored or anxious, or trying to get revenge. The moments I lied to myself in silence. That's what most people don't tell you about trading. It's not just numbers and charts, it's a mirror. And sometimes you don't like what it shows you. I remember a mentor once told me, the market is a cruel therapist. It charges you to tell you the truth. That night, the truth was simple. I wasn't trading a strategy. I was trading an identity crisis. I had wrapped so much of my self-worth into being a successful trader that every red day felt like a referendum on who I was. Not just bad trade, bad result, but bad trade. I'm a failure. And that's the trap. Because when your self-worth is on the line, you stop thinking clearly. You start reacting instead of responding. You overtrade, you chase losses, you break rules, you self-sabotage. That's not a market problem, that's a you problem. And that's why most people quit. Not because they ran out of money, but because they ran out of emotional capital, of trust in themselves. That night I didn't quit, but I didn't trade the next day either. I left the screens off. I took a walk. I journaled not about the trades, but about the why behind them, about what I was really chasing. And I realized it wasn't wealth, it was worth. I was using the market to try and prove something to myself. And when it didn't give me the validation I wanted, I spiraled. That's when things started to change, not instantly, not dramatically, but subtly. I began to decouple my identity from my P&L. I started to look at trades like decisions, not verdicts. I stopped chasing perfection and started seeking consistency. Most people think success in trading is about finding the right strategy. But before that, it's about finding the right questions. The day I almost quit, the question shifted from, how do I win more? To, what am I willing to lose to keep growing? That shift didn't make me instantly profitable, but it made me present. And sometimes being present is the only edge you need to survive your first year. Because the truth is, survival is an edge, maybe the most underrated one. If you can stay in the game long enough, you start to realize most of the pain isn't from the market. It's from within. You're not battling the chart. You're battling your expectations. And once you see that clearly, you can begin, not trading, but healing. The strange thing about trading is that the more you try to control it, the more it slips through your fingers. It's like trying to catch fog with a closed fist. I used to chase what I called the clean setup. You know, the one everything lines up. RSI oversold, MACD crossing, support holding, volume building. It feels perfect. Like you've finally cracked the code. You size up, your pulse quickens, and you hit buy with the confidence of someone who's convinced they're about to finally get paid for all the suffering. And then it turns on you, not always immediately. Sometimes it goes up just enough to give you hope. And then it pivots, slowly, mercilessly, like a wave that pulls back before it crushes the shoreline. I remember one trade like that more than any other. Bitcoin? Back in the tail end of 2021, I thought I had the move nailed. There was a clean double bottom forming. Price was hugging support. Twitter was bullish. I had 4 confluences lined up on my chart. It was textbook. So I did what I swore I wouldn't. I went in heavy. Full position size. No hedge, no stop. Because this time I knew, and I was right, for about 6 hours. Then Asia opened. Some negative news headline broke out of nowhere. Volume spiked. And before I could react, my entry was buried under a 9% red candle. My screen was glowing like a wound. I sat frozen, watching the numbers bleed. My cursor hovered over the sell button like it was an escape hatch, but I couldn't press it. Because pressing it meant admitting I was wrong. That's the cruel irony of control. The more sure you are, the less willing you become to let go. By the time I finally sold, the loss was nearly triple what it should have been. I sat in silence, staring at the empty chart, the open P&L now brutally closed. It wasn't just the money I lost, it was the illusion. The belief that if I studied hard enough, planned carefully enough, read the right threads, followed the right traders, I could finally predict what would happen. But markets don't reward perfection. They reward adaptability. What I didn't understand back then is that the market doesn't punish you for being wrong. It punishes you for staying wrong. The pros don't avoid losses. They just don't argue with reality. That's where most beginners fall the trap of control. They try to outsmart randomness, to squeeze certainty out of noise. They build strategies like bunkers, hoping logic will save them from chaos. But the market is not logical. It's psychological. And when you try to control it, it controls you. So you start adding indicators, back-testing for hours, watching every tick, over-optimizing for entries. You're not trading anymore. You're hiding behind complexity. That's why most of us spiral, because we think the answer to losses is more control, when really the answer is acceptance, not passive resignation, but active humility. The ability to say, this is the setup, this is the risk. If it doesn't work, I walk away. No shame, no story, just process. It took me months to learn that lesson. And even then, I relearn it often. Sometimes in small ways, closing a trade early and accepting a scratch. Sometimes in bigger ways, missing a move entirely because I refuse to chase. But every time I surrender a little more of that fake control, I gain something else, peace. There's a concept in aviation called the illusion of control. It's when a pilot overcorrects because they believe they can outfly turbulence, but in doing so, they often make things worse. The best pilots, they trust the system. They respond, not react. They let the plane ride the storm until it steadies. That's trading too. The best traders I know don't brag about wins. They talk about discipline, about edge, about sticking to plan. They trade like pilots, flying through clouds, calm hands, clear mind. Because they've seen what happens when ego tries to fly the plane. I remember calling a friend the night after that Bitcoin trade. He's been trading longer than I have, mostly options, sometimes crypto. I told him what happened, expected him to laugh or scold or say rookie move. He didn't. He just said, "Yeah, been there. The market teaches you what school can't." I asked him how long it took him to stop chasing the perfect setup. He said, "When I realized the perfect setup doesn't exist. Only perfect execution of imperfect plans." That line stuck with me, because it's true. Trading is a probability game, a dance with uncertainty. You're not aiming for perfection. You're aiming for consistency, for repeatable actions, not guaranteed outcomes. And control. Real control. It's not about forcing results. It's about managing your response to randomness. Learning to let go when the trade breaks your rules. Learning to size down when you're on tilt. Learning to say no, to skip the trade, to wait. That's where the edge is. Not in knowing, in not needing to know. That's what separates the ones who survive from the ones who quit. Not intelligence, but surrender. Surrender to the fact that you are not the market's master. You're its student. And once you stop trying to control it, you can finally start to learn. No one tells you that trading feels like a drug. At first, it's just curiosity. A way to grow your money, maybe pick up a skill. You dabble. You learn. You place a few trades. And then, one day, it hits a big win. Not just a green trade, a perfect one. The kind that makes your heart race and your jaw clench in disbelief. Like you just outplayed the market, outsmarted the system. That moment is dangerous because it leaves a mark on your brain. It doesn't matter if it was luck. It doesn't matter if you had no idea what you were doing. What matters is how it felt, that rush, that high, that surge of dopamine when your account lights up in green. And just like that, you're hooked. Not on money, but on feeling like you're right. I've spoken with traders who blew up 5 accounts, one after another. Each time they said the same thing, I knew better. I just couldn't stop. It sounds absurd, irrational, but it's not. It's behavioral neuroscience. See, every trade win or loss feeds a loop. Anticipation, risk, reward. It's the same loop casinos exploit. The same circuit gamblers ride until they've lost everything. A constant dance between hope and regret. Only in trading it wears a suit. Looks respectable. But underneath, it's the same addiction. I remember a period where I was trading 10-12 times a day, scalping 5-minute candles on SPY and Ethereum, telling myself I was being efficient. Really, I was just chasing the rush. My charts were always open. Notifications pinged every few minutes. I couldn't go more than an hour without checking my phone. My sleep was wrecked. My relationships strained. But I kept telling myself it was part of the grind. Because that's how addiction hides in rationalization. I'm working hard. I'm learning the ropes. I need screen time to get better. All technically true, but the deeper truth, I was compulsively trading because I was emotionally unwell. And the market became my therapist. The trades, just my way of trying to regulate emotions I hadn't yet learned to sit with. Some days, I felt powerful, like I was beating the system. Other days, I felt like a ghost, drained numb, staring at the candles move like waves in a storm I couldn't control. No one talks about that side of trading. The part where the screen becomes a drug. The part where you wake up tired, but still log in. The part where you swear just one more trade, and it turns into 6. The part where your day isn't defined by joy or rest or human connection, but by whether your trades closed green or red. It's subtle, slow, but devastating, like a river wearing down stone. I once spoke to a trader who'd been in the game 15 years. He told me, the difference between a pro and an amateur isn't strategy. It's how they handle boredom. That hit me, because boredom is the gateway. When the market goes sideways, when setups dry up, when patience is required, that's when amateurs force it. They create trades, invent stories, make noise to fill the silence. The pros, they wait, because they know that trading is a game of waiting. And if you can't handle boredom, you're not ready for the game. So I started tracking my trades, not just the numbers, but the why behind them. Every entry got a reason. Not a technical reason. A psychological one. Felt left out. Wanted to make up for earlier. Thought I was missing something. The truth was brutal. More than half of my trades had nothing to do with edge. They were emotional reactions, mini fixes, dopamine hits. And the worst part, some of those trades worked. That's how the addiction strengthens when bad behavior gets rewarded. Because the market doesn't care about your psychology, it's indifferent. You can break every rule and still win, until you don't. Until one day, that same impulse puts you deep into a hole you can't crawl out of. That's when the addiction turns on you. That's when you realize you're not trading anymore. You're gambling, but there's hope in that realization. Because if you can see it, you can stop it. And stopping doesn't mean quitting trading. It means reclaiming your mind. It means setting limits not just on your risk, but on your screen time. It means walking away from the chart, not because you're scared, but because you're sane. It means asking hard questions like, am I trading to grow wealth? Or am I trading to escape something else? And most importantly, it means building structure. Not flashy indicators, not 5-monitor setups, but real structure. Predefined rules, cool-down periods, journaling sessions, accountability, therapy if needed. Because the real work in trading, it's not on the chart, it's inside you, the emotional part. The part that gets bored, scared, greedy, reckless. The part that tells you just one more trade at 2 a.m. because you need to feel something. That part doesn't go away, but it can be managed. And when it is, when you finally step out of the loop, slow down, and see trading for what it really is, then you start to make real progress. Not just financially, but psychologically, because you're not trading to feel something anymore. You're trading with clarity. And clarity, that's the real high. There's a moment every trader hits. It doesn't matter how talented you are, how much back-testing you've done, or how many green days you've strung together. There's always that moment. For some, it comes quietly, an accumulation of small losses that finally tip the scales. For others, it arrives violently like a flash crash in their psyche. For me, it came on a Tuesday morning, late October. Futures were red, but I had a plan. I had a strategy. I was confident. Too confident. I'd been on a streak. 4 green weeks in a row. Pushing size. Calling the top and bottom like I had some sixth sense. The kind of run that makes you forget how dangerous the market can be. The kind that makes you think the rules don't apply to you anymore. I opened a leveraged position on the NASDAQ calls, heavy. I was expecting a bounce. Everything lined up. Or so I thought. The market gapped down hard. At first I held, then I added, then I prayed. By 11 a.m. I was down 5 figures. By 2 p.m. I was frozen. You don't forget the feeling of watching your screen and realizing you've stopped thinking rationally. You're just watching numbers change, hoping they'll turn around, waiting for the pain to end. But it doesn't end. It compounds. Because once you're in that mental state, overconfident, desperate, unwilling to admit you're wrong, you're not trading anymore. You're spiraling. The drawdown that day wiped out 6 months of gains. One mistake, one unchecked ego, one moment where I thought I had the market figured out. That's when I realized the truth. You're never more vulnerable than when you're doing well. Because confidence without humility is the deadliest cocktail in this game. That's how most traders break. Not from their first loss, but from their first big win. Because after a while, the goal shifts. It's no longer about process, it's about proving something. To yourself, to others, to some invisible scoreboard in your mind that tells you whether you're a genius or a fool. That scoreboard becomes your identity. And once trading becomes identity, you're on thin ice. Because now every red candle isn't just a price move, it's a personal attack. Every stop-loss hit isn't just a number, it's a judgment, a verdict on who you are. You stop following your system. You start reacting to pain. You widen your stop. You double down. You go all in. You break. And when you finally realize what you've done when the account is red, your mind is fried, and the silence in the room feels deafening, you sit back and wonder, how did I let this happen? That's the moment where 90% of traders quit. Not because they didn't love trading, but because they built their identity around being right, and the market reminded them that no one's right forever. You have to break sometimes to understand your limits. It's a cruel truth, but also a liberating one. Because once you've been broken, you can begin again, wiser, calmer, with less to prove. The traders who make it, they all have their version of this story. Some blew up accounts, some lost everything, some just lost themselves. But they all came back different, more measured, more detached, more focused on execution, not outcome. I remember taking 3 weeks off after that drawdown. No charts, no trades, just long walks, journal entries, and uncomfortable truths. I realized I had tied my self-worth to my P&L, that I felt more valuable when I was winning, that I confused market luck for personal genius, and that if I didn't fix that, I'd keep breaking. So I rebuilt, slowly, from the ground up. I created a max loss per day rule. I started trading smaller, cleaner setups. I focused on routines, stretching, sleep hydration. I spent more time away from the chart, and over time something shifted. Not in the market, in me. I started to see trades as just trades, not as reflections of my intelligence, not as proof of my ability, just setups with probability. Entries, exits, risk, no more, no less. That's when my edge really began to show. Not because I'd unlocked some secret formula, but because I stopped letting emotion run the terminal. There's a quote I think about often, some attribute it to Jesse Livermore. The game taught me the game, and it didn't spare the rod while teaching. Every trader learns eventually. Sometimes through wins, more often through losses. But the best lessons, they come after the fall. Not because pain is noble, but because pain clarifies. It strips away illusions. It humbles your expectations. It forces you to decide. Are you here to win, or are you here to endure? Because the ones who stay, who really stay, they learn that the goal is not to never fall. It's to rise without needing revenge. To keep going without needing to make it back. To trade not because you're trying to prove something, but because you've finally accepted that you don't have to. That's where the real power lies. Not in dominance, in detachment. Somewhere along the line, you stop chasing. You stop looking for the holy grail strategy, the perfect entry, the one big trade that'll fix everything. You stop measuring your worth by your wins and your shame by your losses. Instead, you sit with the silence. It's not immediate, not cinematic, no thunderous revelation or dramatic transformation. It's quiet. You wake up one day and realize you're not checking futures at 3 a.m. You go an entire afternoon without opening your terminal. You place a trade and forget about it for hours because your stop is set, your plan is defined, and your peace no longer depends on the price. That's what survival looks like in this world. It's not about brilliance. It's not about beating the market. It's about learning how to breathe again. I met a trader once, mid-40s, calm, soft-spoken. The kind of guy who didn't say much in the forums, but always showed up in the monthly stats with consistent green. I asked him once how he stayed in the game so long. He just smiled and said, "Because I stopped needing it to feel like I was enough." That stuck with me, because if you're listening to this, there's a good chance trading is more than just numbers to you. It's identity, freedom, meaning. But when meaning becomes desperation, you stop trading with clarity and start trading with need. And the market? It punishes need. The ones who survive, they find a rhythm. They build routines, not just trading routines, but life routines. They wake up, hydrate, move their bodies, read things that have nothing to do with charts. They detach, not because they don't care, but because they know the market rewards stillness, not panic. They stop asking, "How much can I make today?" and start asking, "What kind of trader am I becoming?" That shift, subtle as it is the real turning point. Because when your focus moves from outcome to process, everything changes. Your emotions stop spiking. Your drawdowns shrink. Your confidence becomes quiet, not loud. And your account slowly, steadily starts to grow. Not in a straight line, but in a real one. I've seen traders walk away after one bad trade. I've seen others come back stronger after losing 6 figures. The difference? The ones who returned had something bigger than the money driving them. A purpose, a curiosity, a willingness to learn even when it hurt, especially when it hurt. They knew that this game isn't about being the smartest, it's about being the most resilient. Because at the end of the day, the market doesn't care if you're right. It only cares if you respect risk, if you've made peace with the uncertainty, if you're still showing up after the storm. That's the part no one teaches you. That survival is the edge, that outlasting others through discipline, humility, and patience is the real alpha. So if you've ever felt like quitting, if you've ever stared at your account and wondered if it's worth it, if you've ever lost faith in yourself because the trade didn't go your way, I want you to know this: you're not alone. Every trader who's still here has been there too, and most of them broke before they became whole. That's how this journey works. It tests you, breaks you, rebuilds you, but only if you stay long enough to learn. So keep your position sizes small. Keep your ego smaller. Trade with a plan. Breathe with your losses. Celebrate the boring days. Journal everything. Talk to other traders not just to share wins, but to stay human. And remember, this is not a sprint. This is a lifetime craft. A mirror that reflects who you are in ways most careers never will. So take care of your mind. Take care of your heart. Take care of the part of you that doesn't need to be right, only to be present. That's where the edge lives. Not in signals, in self-awareness. Not in leverage, in restraint. Not in prediction, in preparation. The best traders I know, they don't talk much. They listen to the market, to their thoughts, to the rhythm of risk. They move like water, and water never forces anything. It just flows, around, through, and beyond. So let yourself flow. Let yourself rebuild. Let yourself become the kind of trader who doesn't need to prove anything to anyone, not even to the market. And when you get there, you'll know, not because of the profits, but because of the peace. So maybe this isn't a story about quitting. Maybe it's a story about why most do and why you don't have to. Because trading will humble you. It'll stretch your emotions. It'll expose your fears, your flaws, your unhealed places. It'll test your relationship with money, ego time, and self-worth. But if you stay through the drawdowns, the overtrading, the FOMO, the numb days, and the euphoric nights, if you stay through the boredom, the breakthroughs, the spirals, and the silence, you'll find something rare. You'll find the kind of discipline that carries over into every part of your life. You'll build emotional resilience, not just for the market, but for relationships, for goals, for dreams you once put on hold. You'll develop the power to sit still in chaos, to breathe through uncertainty, to detach from the outcome and focus on the process. That's the real transformation. Not the money, but the mindset. So if you're still here, still listening, still learning, still showing up, you're already doing better than 90% of traders. Keep going. And if tonight's story spoke to you, if you've ever felt the weight of this path, or stood at the edge of quitting, I want to hear your story. What's been your hardest moment in trading? What did you learn from it? Leave a comment below. I read every one. Let's keep building this community together. And remember, success begins in silence.